Aubergine Chef. Now tonight we're going to make the fudgy frosting for our yellow butter cake. Right now I have some simple syrup boiling on the oven. It's boiling on the stove. It's a 1-to-1 ratio of water and sugar, so it's 1 pound sugar, 1 pound water with just a pinch of cream of tartar. And the cream of tartar is there to help prevent crystallization, which will happen sometimes if you don't have an acid in. So you can use lemon juice if you don't have cream of tartar. You can use vinegar. It's just there to prevent crystallization, which can happen pretty often when you're reducing the water content in a simple syrup. You can take it right off the oven right as soon as it starts boiling, or you can let it reduce a little bit. But don't let it reduce too much, because if you take out too much of the water, you're just going to end up with a big sugar brick. So err on the safe side and just take it off the oven, or take it off the stove, take out the heat right after it boils. I also have some water in another pot boiling, or just about 1 or 2 inches for a double boiler for our fudgy frosting. So why don't we go ahead and get started and start writing out some of our ingredients. Okay, so we need 12 ounces of chocolate. You can use semi-sweet or dark chocolate, whichever you'd like. And then we need 6 ounces of butter, or a stick and a half. So if you're making the yellow butter cake, you just keep the other half of the stick of butter you used, and you can use it in this one. Just put it right in the bowl. You can cut up in smaller pieces, but we're going to melt it down, so it's not a huge deal if we don't. Okay, we'll set that aside. Let's go ahead and weigh out our milk. We need 3 3/4 ounces of milk. We might not use all of it, but we'll have it on hand. This is what we're going to use to help make our icing smoother. So if you don't have milk, you can use heavy cream. I bet you soy milk would work too. Okay, so in our electric mixer bowl, we need 1 pound 8 ounces of powdered sugar. We're going to go ahead and sift it to get out any of the big chunks. Okay, we're going to go ahead and put in 3/8 of an ounce of vanilla extract as well. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and set this aside until we need it. Okay, so our water is boiling for our double boiler. So let's go ahead and put on our chocolate and butter. Now we don't have to worry about tempering chocolate this time, since we're going to add it to the icing. It's got butter in it to help stabilize it, and it's also going to have a lot of powdered sugar and milk, so you won't have to worry about having to temper it or anything like that. So go ahead and just melt it down. Okay, so our chocolate and butter has completely melted. Still a few chunks I'm waiting for the butter to melt down. But just continuously stir to keep the heat even and to make sure that the butter gets completely incorporated with the chocolate. And then once it's all melted, we're going to bring this over to the mixer, which has our powdered sugar and vanilla extract in it. Okay, so let's go ahead and add our butter and melted chocolate, or melted butter and chocolate, to the powdered sugar. This is a really easy recipe. Okay, and go ahead and set it on low speed. Okay, once your chocolate and powdered sugar is mixed together, slowly add in your milk. Okay, once you add your milk, go ahead and scrape your bowl. Okay, and go ahead and whip this on high until it's smooth and creamy. Okay, let's check the consistency of the icing. Okay, it looks pretty good. All the powdered sugar has been incorporated. If it's not, if you have any issues with powdered sugar still being on the sides or anything, go ahead and scrape down the bowl and just go ahead and whip it again. If you want a thicker icing, add a little bit less milk. And if you want a more runny icing, like if you were going to drizzle it on something, add a little bit more milk. Just slowly drizzle it in, so that way you can control it. And if you're unsure, always add a little bit less, because you can add more, but it's very difficult to take it out. The only way to thicken it up after you add the milk is to add more powdered sugar. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start preparing our cake to be iced. So the first thing we need to do is we need to trim it down. So whenever you're cutting with a cake or working with the turntable, it's best to use something to hold it in place. You can use something very basic, and I'm just using that very basic thing. It's just a paper towel that's been slightly dampened. So that way it won't slide around when you're working with it. Actually, I'm going to use this side because it's a shiny side. Okay. So as you can see, my cake kind of sunk down a little bit in the middle and formed these kind of weird ridges in the corners. That's going to be a pain in the butt to ice. It's not even worth trying to deal with it. So we're going to go ahead and cut that off. So what we're going to do is we're going to find the lowest point. Looks like it's right here. And then we're going to draw a line all the way around the cake. Okay, and then just start sawing. Oops, I'm already off the line. And just keep sawing while you're turning it, keeping your eye on the line. Now, this cake is fairly dense, so you kind of want to have a slight downward angle as you're cutting, so that way when you cut, it cuts straight. Because as you're cutting across, sometimes the cake will push your knife upward if it's really dense. So you need to balance that out by kind of angling it downward slightly. Don't overcompensate, because then you're going to create a dome in the opposite direction than if you were going to create a dome. So your dome would go inward as opposed to upward if you weren't countering that. And once you're all the way through, slice on through, and now you have a nice flat cake. Alright, and now we're going to cut this cake in half, and I'm actually going to use a technique that I have been seeing on my blog a lot. I've heard of this technique. It's when you use dental floss to cut the cake. A lot of my viewers swear by it. They have compelled me to give it a try. I've never tried it before, so we're going to see how it works. So first thing you need to do when you're using the floss technique, as I'm told, is to cut a line just like you would if you were going to slice it. Then take a big piece of floss and put it in the line. Okay, and once you have it in the line, then you just pull it outwards like this. Until it comes to a straight line again. Remove the floss. And let's see how it cut. Pick up the cake layer. That's a pretty clean cut. It's pretty straight. I have to say, it's a pretty neat technique. Alright, so now you need to clean up the crumbs off your cake, because whenever you ice, you want to make sure there's not a single crumb anywhere. Because if there's a crumb anywhere on the table, my chefs always said, if there's a crumb anywhere on the table, then it can get in your cake and your icing, and you don't want that to happen. So go ahead and clean up your cake, and when we come back, we'll start icing. Okay, so now that we've cleaned up all the crumbs off our table, the first thing we need to do is we need to add some simple syrup to the cake. Now what this is going to do is it's going to moisten the cake, it's going to add some sweetness, and it's going to add flavor if we had any herbs or extracts or spices added to the simple syrup. This is a really neat way, or easy way I should say, to add moisture back to your cake if it has dried out. It's not a perfect solution. If your cake is as dry as a brick, I don't know if it's going to work in that situation. But this is going to help keep it moist if you refrigerated it for a day, or if you froze it and you're defrosting or thawing it out. So before you start icing, let it soak up a little bit. Okay, and now we're going to go ahead and fill the cake. Oops. Now if you have a chunk of, or a different kind of filling you would like to use, go ahead and use it. I'm just going to use the icing. You can pipe the filling in, or you can spread it like I am. Now if you use a different kind of filling than the filling or the icing, then you want to make sure you pipe a line along the edge with frosting. And that's just to keep it so that way if your cake squishes out the filling, what comes out is chocolate icing instead of filling. So that way you don't have to worry about it looking or having stripes of the filling on the outside. It's just a small precaution. You don't have to do it if you're confident, but I would do it. Okay, let's put the next layer on top. Okay, we're going to put some simple syrup in here. Okay, so the icing can get kind of a skin on it, and it can become kind of gummy at the same time. All that means is that it's starting to dry out. The high amount of powdered sugar in here is a culprit of that, and a little bit of milk, of course. So what you need to do is to bring it back to icing consistency is just add a little bit of milk, like a tablespoon or two at a time, and just whip it on high until it's nice and smooth again. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is ice the top of the cake. I'm using an offset spatula and just pushing it to the edges. And then to smooth it out, just turn your turntable quickly. Whoops, kind of a track. And applying a little bit of pressure, using it kind of like a snowplow. Push it up to the edges until it goes over the edges. And then any of the corners that didn't get covered, we'll just do a patch job.